Powered by the Inside the Birds podcast. Now, live from inside the Matt Black Kia Studios. It's Football at 4.
Football at 4 is powered by the Inside the Birds podcast, and it is brought to you by PropSwap, America's sports betting marketplace. Sell your sports bets and take your profit. Find out how. Go to PropSwap.com or download the PropSwap app today. Warren in Cape May Courthouse won't have to travel far. We'll be at Slack Tide Brewing Company, and so will Warren from Cape May Courthouse. He has a chance to pick his Eagles road trip, thanks to Philly Sports Trips and Ernest & Sons Old Fashioned Butcher Shop. One lucky listener will win a road trip for two to an Eagles road game of their choice with airfare, hotel, pregame tailgate party, and 2 tickets to the Eagles road game of their choice. You have another chance to qualify coming up at 4:55 today. All right, Andrew DiCecco. Football at 4 from InsideTheBirds.com as he joins me right now here on the Sports Bash Live on 97.3 ESPN. My friend Andrew, what's going on, bud?
Mike, how you doing, man? Just trying to stay dry.
I know it was coming to, I had a little car issue today. My tire basically went sideways, and I'm standing out there in the pouring rain just staring at it like, what am I supposed to do with this right now? So I know the rain must have moved your way because it's cleared out a little bit here, but woo, it is an April shower if we've ever seen one. But let's get your opinion on the first move of April, which happened on Monday as Howie Roseman. I guess it was still, I think we were still in March at the time. But Howie Roseman makes a big trade. And really, what does it mean for this draft now that they have 2 picks as opposed to the 3 picks? Is there any difference in philosophy, do you think?
I think that it was highly unlikely that the Eagles were going to make 3 first-round picks as it is. So they got tremendous value with that, Mike, in that, they took advantage of the Saints being desperate. They got another first-round pick for next year where the quarterback class is markedly better. And if something doesn't work out with Jalen Hurts this year, you almost ensure you have 2 first-round picks. You can kind of go up and get your Bryce Young or your C.J. Stroud or whomever is the top candidate next year. So you have to really like what the Eagles have done there. I think picking up pick 101 is going to be huge instead of having that drop off from 83 to, I believe it was 122 in this draft. When you're talking about depth and players that you're going to be able to find in that area, I think that's immense value there as well. So it's hard to find any fault in that trade if you're an Eagles fan. And if you're looking at it objectively, I think Howie Roseman strikes again.
I want to get your opinion on a lot of people. Do you feel, and I think you kind of hinted at this, but to kind of expand on it a bit, that the Eagles kind of are giving Hurts another year of evaluation, and it gives them a pick next year in a deeper quarterback, a better quarterback class. You can now possibly be in play for if somebody wants to get traded, let's say Kyler Murray or someone like that decides, hey, I don't want to be here anymore. We seem to see that now. The extra draft pick next year gives them that kind of safety net if Hurts doesn't make a step forward. Do you see it that way?
Yeah, it absolutely does. It provides insurance if something doesn't. I mean, look, in all likelihood, in an ideal scenario, Jalen Hurts works out, and you would now suddenly have a lot of ammunition in which you can sort of build around him, and you're going to have a young team, and they're going to be viable for the foreseeable future. But if it doesn't work out and he sort of falls on his face next year and they don't see the growth that they expect, well, now you suddenly armed yourself with 2 first-round picks, so it gives you flexibility to, like you said, make a trade for a guy like a Kyler Murray perhaps, or grab one of the top quarterbacks next year and 2 guys that, right now are head and shoulders above, I would say, the candidates that are coming out this year. So I think the Eagles have really done a great job maneuvering and setting themselves up for long-term success.
You know what's funny? They had 3 picks, which is an embarrassment of riches. Now they have 2, and people are almost like, well, you can't take a luxury pick now. And it's like, well, wait a second. Not too many times do you have 2 picks. I don't want to say luxury pick, but I guess if you had 3 picks, you could have said, hey, maybe we take a wide receiver because we have 3, and taking a 3rd wide receiver in the first round for the 3rd consecutive year isn't as big if we take it with our 3rd pick. So with only 2 picks, do you think that pushes out the possibility of taking like a wide receiver?
Well, I think right now the Eagles have positioned themselves, looking at their depth chart, and knowing that there's 3 weeks that stand between now and the NFL draft, but either a trade or they have to get another receiver with a blue chip draft pick in order to shore up that room, because right now it's very underwhelming outside of Devontae Smith, and there's a lot of question marks there. Quez Watkins, to me, he was a 600-yard receiver. That's nothing to sneeze at, but I think if they had their druthers, he would be a wide receiver 3, and you would get a competent pairing, a big-bodied pairing to go with Devontae Smith, such as maybe a Treylon Burks. I think right now they've sort of had their hands are tied, and they limited their, the window's so small right now, and how they're going to be able to fortify that wide receiver room. So I think now it would make sense, probably with pick 18, to address the wide receiver position, and I would assume that with 15 they will look to get another edge rusher in there to complement what they already have right now.
All right, give me your thoughts on that class, the wide receiver class, because if they're thinking about one, is this a good year to be in that spot? What do they have? 16 and 18 now, or 15 and 18 now?
15 and 18, yeah. Well, the thing with this draft, by and large, it's very rich with depth, but there's not a lot of guys that make you say, yeah, they're going to be a perennial all-pro, that this just jumps out when you watch their tape. I think you're going to see a lot of productive players, but there's not a whole lot of high-end talent. So you're going to see a lot of capable wide receivers. I'm particularly not big on Drake London, the receiver from USC. I like Treylon Burks, someone who has Deebo Samuel type of attributes and traits that they can sort of plug him in, and he can be the big body receiver that can affect all 3 levels of the field. But you can also line him up all over formations and even in the backfield and get creative in ways how you manufacture the football to him. So he would be somebody that I would look at. Obviously, Garrett Wilson, I think, is going to be gone by that point, by 15. He's the head of the class here as far as the wide receiver hierarchy goes in this draft. So, and Chris Olave, to me, really reminds me of an Emmanuel Sanders, very advanced route runner, savvy, fluid, someone that I think is pretty technically savvy and can affect all 3 levels of the field as well, but not overly explosive. So I think that the Eagles have a number of players that I think that you can draft in that spot, and you can plug them right in. And that, for me, would probably be Treylon Burks right now.
A couple of years now. I'm going back. How many years with Latron when Treadwell, when he was the best? Like, that was a very weak receiver class. We're not looking at it like that, right?
No, not at all. I just think that there's a lot of guys that are sort of grouped in the same tier, and there's really not a surefire head of the class going to be a perennial all-pro type of guy, by my estimation.
Yeah, well, I know how important it is for you, Andrew. What is the right – okay, 2 questions. What is the right complement to Smith, in your opinion? Like, what type of receiver do you think would be the right kind of guy to get to complement him?
That's a great question. And, I've heard a lot about the free agent receivers that are out there. You hear about the T.Y. Hiltons and the Jarvis Landrys. That, to me, that's not really what the Eagles need. The Eagles need a big-bodied receiver that can help out Dallas Goedert and being another option that can help out in the red zone and help Jalen Hurts in these contested catch situations and between the hashes. So, you look at Treylon Burks, 6'2", 225. He's also an explosive player who's very versatile. So I think that when you see what he can bring to the table from a skill set standpoint, combined with what you already have in Devontae Smith, I think that, to me, would be the most ideal pairing. But, you could also make a case for someone like a Garrett Wilson. But like I said, I doubt that he's available at 15. But those are 2 options right there that I think would be seamless fits opposite Devontae Smith.
All right. Would you be interested in Jamison Williams with the ACL?
Well, the Eagles aren't in position right now where they can draft a player that's not going to be available. I think right now, he's not going to be available till late summer, training camp time. And the Eagles need somebody right now that can get that work on the field with Jalen Hurts right now, build that continuity, get into training camp, and really take that second receiver mantle opposite Devontae Smith. They really have limited their margin for error as far as they can't afford to take a project, right? They need an instant contributor. And I think right now he would have to be ruled out. Not to say that he's not going to be a Pro Bowl receiver with tremendous upside. I think he has all the traits that you want, but right now the Eagles need somebody that can step right in and contribute from day one.
Two third-round picks. What's the depth like at that position? Because I think we can all agree that they probably will take a receiver at some point in this draft.
Yeah, I think the depth is great. You got the Khalil Shakur from Boise State. You have Jalen Tolbert from South Alabama, who's someone who I really like, who goes about 6'1", 195. And I think that he can sort of take that contested catch. He can serve that role. So there are guys in there. I think we talked about Alec Pierce, the Cincinnati receiver, as someone that I think is going to be a riser over these next few weeks based on just what he's able to do, his versatility and his physicality and his ability to move well for his size and his blocking prowess and things of that nature. So there are a bunch of guys. I think Danny Gray is another player who I've interviewed for Draft Dreams, our podcast on Inside the Birds, is a player that is very fast, around a 4.3. I saw last night that he visited a few different teams, including the Minnesota Vikings. So he's someone that I also expect to be a riser through the process. Should slot in between the third, fourth round, I would say.
If you guys haven't got a chance to check out Draft Dreams, hosted by Andrew DiCecco, he talks to smaller school prospects, guys that you may not have heard of, and gets their stories. It's a really fun, really good look at some of these guys. I like the one, South Dakota State, the kid that you just talked to, and he said, in his mind, I'm as good as these other guys. You just don't know me because I play at a smaller school.
Exactly, and these are the type of stories that Jeff and I really wanted to share and bring to light, because there are so many countless examples of prospects like this, Mike, that the general public, the masses, don't really know about because they're from these schools that are sort of out of sight, out of mind, and they are sometimes these late round gems that all of a sudden they start, they're drafted to your team and you're looking to research who these guys are. And 43.5-inch, vertical leap is impressive. I don't care if it was at a pro day, combine, whatever. I mean, that's just unheard of. And he has freakish intangibles. And I really had a great conversation with Mike, and I think that he is another player that should be in that 6th, 7th round conversation as a late round project, special teams contributor right away, had to overcome a lot of adversity, was a guy who wasn't invited to the NFLPA Bowl until midway through the week as an injury replacement. So you talk about someone that had to always prove himself and prove that he belonged, and that's someone like that who doesn't take anything for granted.
Yeah, I think, those guys get lost in the sauce sometimes, but typically when somebody from a smaller school gets drafted, it's because, they really can play, and sometimes they slip through the cracks or they're late bloomers. So that's a great draft story, and you should check out more of those with Andrew as the draft gets closer. Now, one of the things I want to get into, as we've been talking about wide receiver, what about a player like Brandon Cooks? Their name, the Eagles are going to be attached to everybody. That's what Howie Roseman is always doing his due diligence. If you're someone who hates Roseman, you got to give him credit that he works hard. He makes every phone call. And, of course, they're one of the teams. People always, when you write a story for the website, Andrew, I'm sick of hearing they're attached to everybody. Hey, what do you want me to do? They do their due diligence. That's what a good GM does. Brandon Cooks, any interest?
Well, I think the name carries more allure than the actual player. I mean, he's been an effective player, Mike, when healthy. But this is a player who's getting up there in age. He's also suffered numerous concussions, right? That's something that can't be understated, given, they've all come very close together, I believe, as well. So explosive player, been productive, sort of bounced around to numerous teams, and he's produced no matter who the quarterback is. So I think there's something to be said for that. But you also have a player who I think can be a younger version of that, or an explosive element similar to what he can do in Quez Watkins. So I think the name Brandon Cooks is going to gauge a lot of interest and a lot of, from the fan base. But when you really look at it, do you really want to take on another player with a similar body type and an injury history that's pretty scary? So, I mean, I'd be out on that if I was Howie Roseman.
Yeah. It's funny because he's a guy, by the way, very productive in Houston last year, over 1,000 yards. He's over 1,000 yards, I think 6 out of his 8 seasons. Why does he keep bouncing around?
Probably that's a good question. Like I've said, he has been productive everywhere, but I think that maybe a classic case of a player who doesn't like his fit and he thinks that the grass is going to be greener in another place. Maybe he didn't mesh well with coordinators. Maybe the money wasn't what he was looking for. And I don't know. I just think that it's a puzzling thing to me. And I think teams maybe are scared off with his injury history, or it could be a number of reasons. But it's kind of puzzling to figure it out because he has been productive everywhere he's gone.
Andrew DiCecco, football at 4, and Eagles make that trade. They get the extra third-round pick. How valuable is having 2/3 in a draft like this?
Huge. That to me was one of the things that jumped out right away, because when you look at, as I alluded to earlier, the depth in this draft, and the Eagles really need to shore up a lot of depth issues, such as safety. A guy like Maryland's Nick Cross could suddenly come into play here. Immensely talented safety with great intangibles, and I think someone who has risen through the draft process and is now viewed largely as a third-round pick. So that's just one example. They need depth at a lot of positions: defensive tackle, defensive end, linebacker. So having that extra draft pick in the third round gives them that opportunity. It also gives them a chance to package that with one of their picks and move up if you really like a player. So, they talked about it on Inside the Birds, the podcast today. If a guy like Sauce Gardner drops within reach, do the Eagles strike and package up one of their picks to get up there? And I think that's a very viable situation and a plausible situation, and something that now they have the ammo. They have, additional ammo in which to do so.
Yeah, I guess that's something when we have a little bit more time that we can get into, but guys that you would view as trade-up options, like who is worth making a move up to go get?
Yeah, that's going to be a great. That could be a whole 20-minute block in itself. Just the why behind it and the scheme fits and everything else. But I think Sauce Gardner, when you look at what he represents, he's head and shoulders the best cornerback in this draft class, and the Eagles need a player like that, as a building block in the secondary that you can plug in for the next 12 to 14 years. And he has the size, the length, the fluidity, and the ball skills, the instincts, and everything that you look for in the top corner. And I think that if he's within striking distance, it behooves the Eagles to go and be aggressive and get that guy. So you saw it last year. There was interest in Pat Surtain and J.C. Horn. But I think now you have 32-year-old Darius Slay, you have Zach McPherson, Avonte Maddox, and you don't have much else there. And I think now when you have a player that if he falls within their reach, they have to go get him.
Yeah, good conversation, and we'll get into that a little bit more when Andrew's back next week, when we get a little week closer. Who are some guys that would be worth moving up to go get? They have that extra third-round pick, as Andrew said, huge. Last one. Ojabo, if he's there at 51 because of that Achilles, they've done this before with Sidney Jones. Do you do that again, though? If he's there, do you have to take him?
I have a hard time thinking that he gets past Kansas City at the end of the first round, who can afford a luxury pick there, given just his immense upside. But, Mike, it would be really tough to pass on Ojabo at 51. But, again, the Eagles need an instant contributor at that. They don't have the luxury of taking a guy that they're going to give him a redshirt year. They need to take a guy you can plug and play, given their deficiencies, especially on the defensive side of the ball. So I think that they're going to have to pass on that if he is there.
All right, Andrew DiCecco, of course, we're getting closer to the draft. Check him out. His Draft Dreams is a great YouTube show on the Inside the Birds platform. I thoroughly enjoy the whole journey for a lot of these guys. There's a lot of local guys, too, this year. Think about this. 3 players locally, Bo Melton, Isaiah Pacheco, and the kid from Bridgeton, Marquise Bell. Those 3 guys, 3 guys that played in the Cape Atlantic League, or now the West Jersey League, but from Cape Atlantic League schools, all could be drafted. So very interesting stories that we have to uncover between now and the draft. Andrew DiCecco, everybody. Appreciate it, bud.
You got it, man. Talk soon.
All right, that's Andrew DiCecco here on the Sports Bash. It's football at 4.